Welcome to Hall & Estates and Succession Planning, a series of podcasts hosted by Ian Hall and Susanna Popovic-Montag. The podcast you are listening to will provide information and insights into estate planning in Canada. From the offices of Hall & Hull in Toronto, here are Ian and Susanna.
Hi, and welcome to Hall & Estate and Succession Planning. You're listening, and some of you may be watching, episode 191 of our podcast on Thursday, December 10th, 2009.
Welcome, Susanna.
Hi there, Ian. How are you today?
I'm just fine, thank you.
That's good.
Happy to be podcasting. We're a little behind schedule this week. It's been a bit of a tough week. My dad passed away on the weekend, so we're sort of running around getting things organized. But it was time, and he's in a better place. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So that's been a bit of a crazy time for this week. We wanted to talk about some other interesting news, and that was that to toot our own horn, so to speak, the Canadian Bar Association comes out with a monthly magazine, and they did there was a contest out there in the terms of some judging of various websites and so on, and we were proud, Hall & Hull was proud to receive the award for the best multimedia website for lawyers.
It's so exciting. We're just thrilled that that was actually the result and the recognition. It's an unbelievable, I think, a real kudos to our firm and the work that's been done by our individual lawyers and participants, so we're very proud of that.
Yes, we are. My dad was always an early adopter with technology, so he was a big part of getting that whole project going, and we have some of his videos right on the webpage still, which are based on the statistics, are watched quite regularly. But for a guy that was not of that vintage, he was he spearheaded the efforts that we put it into it, and I think they've been rewarded with it's a fun to get the award, but we are always very proud of our website and continue to update it and are constantly looking at changes, which in fact hopefully in the new year we're going to be able to have our new and improved website released, but that's still in the working, so we'll announce that when it happens. All right, well, I wanted to turn back to our mini-series that we've been working on in the context of power of attorneys, and more particularly looking at, as we've said before, from the client perspective. What can the client expect us to be discussing with them when they get into this world of capacity litigation, and or not just contentious litigation, or taking on the role as a power of attorney. I was reminded, actually, as my dad's health declined over the last few months, we were constantly faced with having to deal with the power of attorney, using the power of attorney. My mother was the attorney, and she dealt with things from an administrative standpoint, but it was one of those reliefs when you pulled it out of the file, like, oh good, we've got one, and it's properly done, and it's usable. So I personally experienced, I know it seems sort of trite, but the importance of having a power of attorney that works, that we don't have to run to court, we don't have to be tested. We were lucky, obviously, that we had no challenge or family dynamics to deal with it, but there's nothing that beats the well-drafted document.
That's for sure. And having it ready to go when you really need it, I think that's a peace of mind that you can only hope that everyone plans for in advance properly like that.
And as my mother was working through her role as power of attorney, I was constantly reminding her of her duties, which opens us into our next discussion, which are the duties of a power of attorney. I'm of course joking, but it's true. The importance of the job. In our last podcast, we talked about some of the earlier fundamental duties of good record keeping and so forth. But one of the things that we were dealing with in my dad's later months were dealing with bringing in the assets and determining whether some needed to be sold or not sold for care costs and so on. So that's a big part of the decision-making process. Before you even take the active step, you have to start making business decisions.
Right. And I think, Ian, we may have mentioned on a previous podcast that part of the responsibilities of a person who's acting as a power of attorney or a guardian, if they've been appointed by the court, is to actually have in hand the individual's will, so that they know what kinds of assets are going to whom in certain situations. And so when things do have to be sold, we know whether or not they're already earmarked for someone at the end of the day, and if so, then some decisions have to be made as well.
That's a very good point, and one that now that you raise it, I never actually looked at my dad's will while I was helping my mother. So I've broke my own rule. But that's a good illustration. I say that in both chastising myself, but as a good illustration of when you get into the hurly-burly of the process, you sometimes forget some of the fundamentals. And what we often will tell our clients is that don't be afraid to come back to talk to us and sort of get your bearings as to where you are during the process, so that we can refresh your memory and your mindset as to some of the core duties. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my dad's passing was quick, so there wasn't a lot of activity, but the fact is that here I am, I do live and breathe this work, and I never actually looked at his will directly. Now, I had an idea of what was in it because he'd told me before when he got sick, but it would have been a good idea to actually look at the document. And I think that if we had to care for him over a longer period of time, it might have been worthwhile to sit down with the lawyer just to get a refresher. Yeah. Because you're so focused on making sure that the care is there, that the right chair is in the room, or the facility is doing what they're doing, and you're forgetting sometimes some of the basic job that you have. And why we say that is that because that's where the litigation comes from.
Well, and that's what I was just thinking, and that's the irony of it. People are doing good for goodness sakes. They're so focused on the emotional aspect of, taking care of a loved one.
That's right.
That, and then it's so easy at the end of the day for someone to sit back and chastise or criticize what was done, saying, that wasn't the standard. Unfortunately, that is the requirement. So to be able to sort of stop and have that advice maybe along the way or whatever to refresh it, as you say, I think it's good advice, because you do get caught up. You can't help but be involved.
That's right. The focus is the care, and you aren't focusing on the business side of the job. Yet when they pass, the business side of the job is all that matters.
That's
because
right.
you haven't documented the care. Nobody will believe how much you put into the care. Nobody will believe the time and energy that went into it. All they care about is, well, what business role did you take, and did you perform those business duties properly? Right. So it's a good experience. I mean, it's been a hard time for me and my family, but a tremendous learning experience. And really, again, I think it helps if I'm looking at the perspective of the client, what they're going to get themselves into in the power of attorney world,
right.
And when they're dealing with a person who is incapable, what kind of realities are there? Let's not just talk about the law, but let's talk about the reality of the job. So that kind of refresh look at things is one idea. So anyway, again, it's a sad day that my dad passed away, but he was a great man and a tremendous part of this practice area. So he's going to be very much missed, but he certainly left his mark, and no stone was unturned in respect of his role in the practice of law, and as a dad and as a friend to many. So
absolutely.
Thanks so much, Susanna, for today.
Thanks to you too.
Again, apologize for being a couple days late on the podcast, but we'll get it up and aired.
Thank you, Ian.
You have been listening to Hall and Estates and Succession Planning by Ian Hall and Susanna Popovic-Montag. The podcast that you've been listening to has been provided as an information service. It is a summary of current issues in estates and estate planning. It is not legal advice, and you're reminded to always speak with a legal professional regarding your specific circumstance. To listen to other Hull & Hall podcasts or leave any questions or comments, please visit our website at hullestatemediation.com.